Hi guys, my name is Kirsty and welcome to Upside Down Books.
Non più tra I farfalloni amarò.
For the first time, I am going to one-on-one discuss with you a particular book. How exciting. As you've already seen in the title, this is The Chimes by Anna Smaill. Now I was going to include this one into my usual mini reviews group, but I decided that seeing as this was the book club pick of the month for what was the month that just went? September, for the book club that I run with my friend Casey, the Squabbling Dragons, I figured I might as well have a good discussion with you, plus I have a lot of things to talk about. Now this will be a spoiler-free discussion of the book, so fear not if you haven't read it, I won't be spoiling anything of the story for you. This is what the book looks like. It is a fantasy book that's set in an alternate London and revolves heavily around music. It has an absolutely stunning cover for starters, and it has a really promising plotline. It follows a character called Simon who travels from the version of Essex in this world into London on a mission set by his mother. Now his mother and the rest of his family have all died, they've passed away, and in this world everything is orchestrated by music. A beautiful pun. It's like a gigantic instrument called the Chimes. Now throughout the day various musical things sound throughout the city and people stop what they're doing, but this is the really important one. I believe it happens somewhere in the late afternoon or midday, and the chime sounds out and people stop what they're doing and their memories are wiped. So the tagline that follows this book is keep your memories close. The idea being that most people can't remember anything beyond the very basic things about themselves and their most recent memories. There's a lot to do with body memory, which I guess can be most closely attributed to muscle memory. So for example, the way that a pianist can just know a song after a while because their hands just know what's coming next, that sort of thing. So that's the reason that these people know that they need to eat, to sleep, to get up. They know they have a routine that they're sunk into. But Simon has this mission that the reader is unsure of from the beginning as to what he needs to do, but we do get the inkling that even without Simon realizing it, he's probably on the side of things where people are questioning the more sinister side effects of the chimes. I thought that the whole premise of this book of a boy going into the city in a place where no one can remember anything because everything is ruled by music essentially was an awesome plotline. However, I ended up rating it a 3 out of 5 stars. Now that's by no means a bad rating. 3 is, you know, it's a solid read, but it's nothing special. I was expecting a 4 if not a 5-star read out of this book. The book is really hard to read, so that's what I want to discuss with you guys today, is why I think you should still read The Chimes, or maybe why some of you should just move straight onto V.E. Schwab, who has a slightly less complicated alternate London series. But taking a few steps back, the Squabbling Dragons, the book club that I run with my friends, is a book club dedicated to reading underrated or underread sci-fi fantasy novels. On the 17th of each month we start reading a new book that was picked the month before. But of course, by picking these unknown sci-fi and fantasy books, you do run the risk of picking one that is just so entrenched in its genre that it's just like, I really don't know what was happening in that book. And unfortunately, I think this is where Chimes has suffered a little bit. Unsurprisingly, however, this book has or was longlisted in 2015 for the Man Booker Prize, and I can really see where they're coming from. When you look at the sort of books that do get listed onto that, it's usually done by authors who are very clever in what they've written. And that is the bottom line that we need to start with in saying that what Anna Smaill has done in creating this story is ridiculously clever. It's hard to read, and my main complaint about the book was that the ending was disappointing. But when you actually look back and see what she's done, it's actually really clever. I don't think I could have written a book like this at all. So let's start with the negatives and end with the positives. So as I said, the most disappointing or the biggest letdown of the book was its ending. Unfortunately, considering the book has been quite epic, having such an unreliable narrator the entire way through, it just seems to be building and building and building to this epic climax, and it doesn't deliver. So I will say that going into this one, lower your expectations a little. You're appreciating the journey rather than the destination, and I find that difficult. I am definitely a reader who is greatly influenced by how a book ends. I might have hated it the whole way through, but if it ends well, I end up rating it 5 out of 5 stars and then a month later questioning myself. The fact that Simon is an unreliable narrator is frustrating but you know, that is just a literary technique. Simon can't remember much. He can't remember why he's now in London, not really, and he can't remember much about what he's supposed to be doing. He is particularly gifted in that people literally do keep their memories close in this book. A lot of people carry around bags in which they keep random objects, and they have infused their memories into those objects. Now, Simon can touch those objects and relive those memories. So it's almost like Harry Potter and the Pensieve. It's another way for him to really analyse memories that have happened, and you get this sort of feverish feeling about them because you don't want to lose those. The other main character that we see in this one is the leader of the gang that Simon ends up joining with, and that is Lucien, and he is on and off an uncomfortable character. He clearly knows something. I want to compare him to Kaz Brekker from the Six of Crows duology. He's that sort of shifty character that you never really know what he's thinking and exactly what his intentions are for his friends. However, slightly less complicated than Kaz Brekker, because Lord knows no one is ever going to be that boy and being confusing. They make a really dynamic duo and that sort of saves the book, but we're not onto the positives just yet. The unreliability of Simon is painful. You feel like you kind of are repeating a lot of the content for like the first 50 pages. This book doesn't get amazing until about page 150. So that is the time and level of effort that you are going to have to put into before you start really reaping the rewards of having invested something into this story. Until then, you're really building up Simon's character, but it takes so long because you've got nothing to go off. Simon doesn't know how he is, so how is the reader supposed to discover that? It's so complicated. But in those 150 pages, we are progressively making our way through each item in Simon's satchel and thus reliving his memories and starting to piece together a few things. I was definitely expecting there to be more action throughout. And I thought we were going to have a rival gang for a long time because the gang goes hunting illegally for something called the Lady. Now, the Lady I believe to be a person. The Lady is not a person. The Lady is actually a precious metal and they can sell it on the black market for lots of money, and that's how this group is making their money. But that was really confusing and I think probably an error on my behalf, but I don't understand why it was called The Lady, and it just built expectations that we were going to have this epic female villain to defeat everyone, and they're like, oh, and I found the nugget in the sand. That was like, oh, okay. But the biggest problem that I had with this book was the substitution of words to alter the language. It being a very musically driven book, obviously with there being various points throughout the day when music controls their life, literally, everyone is very familiar with music and 9 out of 10 people play an instrument unless they're super poor and like in the slums in a really bad way. This means that words like suddenly or and then are replaced with subito and presto for fast, all musical terms. I play the piano, I know these terms, and on top of that I also speak Italian, which is super helpful for just translating the ones that I'm not super familiar with. But oh my goodness, I just feel sorry for people who are not familiar with those terms. Yes, as you read along, most of them you do pick up what meaning is being insinuated by those words, but even for me there were a couple of words where I was like translating the sentences wrong effectively until I actually just clarified and was like, ah, but that's not what's happening. It's not huge, it's just like one word every now and again, but my god, it just completely makes your reading pace stumble and just is such a distraction to the story that's going on because you're trying to work out what is happening. On top of everything else, and then you've got weird language. I just thought it was a completely unnecessary detail, but I also thought the added element of weaving that in is probably part of the reason it got listed onto the Man Booker Prize. The depth to which Smaill has gone to creating this world, to making it in a routine and the language, and really analysing how people would act and respond to this world is done to the nth degree. Like, everything is sorted, it's incredible. But it's a lot to take on for a book that's under 300 pages in any case. But let's move on to the positives. Those were my main complaints. I'm obviously not going to discuss the ending because honestly it's not the most exciting thing in the book, and spoilers, and we're not here for spoilers. So let's move on to the things that I really enjoyed about this book. Number one, being the absolute favourite thing of this book that I just could not get enough of, was the relationship. Now I am going to tell you who the relationship is between in here. I really don't think it'll impact your reading at all, and I think it is the biggest incentive for reading this book. This is the point in which I say, read this book, guys, because good lord. This has LGBT male-male romance and the best male-on-male relationship I have read in a long time. It has made it onto number three on my all-time favourite LGBT romances that I have ever read. The relationship, of course, will happen between Simon and Lucien. We are never really clarified whether they are gay. I am pretty sure Lucien is probably more like Pan. It's delicious. It is delicious how it is made up. I cannot even express how natural it works. Considering nothing happens for such a long time in the book, and suddenly you're going, oh my god, I ship them so hard and I don't know why. And I love that. I love going, there's a relationship here that they are subtly feeling it. It's like you yourself has fallen in love and you don't realise until you've fallen. It's incredibly well written. And when the two come together at various points, not necessarily for just kisses, but any close interaction, the sexual tension is through the roof. But oh my good lord, it's just written so well. It's written so ridiculously well. I can't implore you to read this enough. If you're willing to put in the effort to read a story that is quite good, if just a little bit of a fizzle towards the end and a little bit tricky to read, it's so worth it just for that relationship. Like, my god. If you are wondering who my other two were on that list, beating out Lucien and Simon, those other relationships are Simon and Baz from Carry On by Rainbow Rowell, and the relationship that eventuates in Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda, which I cannot discuss for spoilery reasons. These two are literally more so a favourite of mine than the relationship that happens in Six of Crows regarding Jesper. So if you've read that one, you know what I'm talking about. The other good things about it are the way that the world is created. I love this concept. The concept of a world being controlled by music, that's awesome. The idea of chimes, so clever. The idea of being able to infuse memories into objects, so clever. The idea that there might be a resistance, but how on earth do you make a resistance in the world that can't remember? So clever. And the added element of people who completely lose their memories. People who've lost their physical, tangible memories and have no job and therefore have no ties to the world become the memory loss or the memoryless. I can't remember what the term is. They're the people who pretty much can't function because they don't know, they can't remember anything. There's nothing in their brain to tell them who they were. So there's lots of layers to this and I absolutely loved it. All the characters are very interesting and it did feel like we were going to explore more of them but then we didn't, but I quite enjoyed keeping the main interest revolving around Simon and Lucien. So I'm now going to read you a quote from the book which absolutely killed me between those two because I feel like I need to share it with you just to explain the number of little moments that happen that are like this. "Give me your weight," he says. I push back again behind me, pray he's strong enough to take it, and kick free. Then Lucien is gripping me by the chest and I'm half over his back and falling for a moment. Then I'm down on my feet on flat ground and I'm standing close to him. Both of us breathing hard. Like, you just, the tension just builds in little moments like that just continuously and eventually you'll just collapse because you can't take it anymore. So yeah, I thought I would have more main positive points to bring out, but I think I've covered everything now. So this was definitely a 3-star for me. Around page 230 I thought it was going to make it to 5 stars, it just gets that good. But unfortunately it just fell for me towards the end. However, I still recommend this if you think you want to pursue reading this to get a taste for Simon and Lucien, which I highly, highly, highly recommend. Please do get yourself a copy. It's not a long book at all to read. It took me about a week to get through it, but it was still enjoyable. It's an interesting book to sort of read and turn over in your mind in the moments when you're not reading it. There are definitely downfalls to it, but if we took away the bad ending and allowed it to have its slow beginning, the book really is pretty decent at the end of the day. Those are all my thoughts for the Chimes by Anna Smaill. Let me know down below if you've read it and what your thoughts are. I would absolutely love to know, good or bad. But other than that, I will see you in my next video. Goodbye.